My father demands that I give my half-sister a job and a piece of the land I inherited from my grandfather after he abandoned me. The audacity still makes my hands shake. Dad left when I was 7. No goodbye, no explanation. Just an empty closet and Mom crying at the kitchen table for 3 months straight. While I learned to fix leaky faucets and mow lawns, he was starting his new perfect family with Veronica, a yoga instructor half his age. Grandpa never forgave him. Blood doesn't mean shit if you don't show up, he'd say, teaching me to drive his old truck through the orchards. For 18 years, Grandpa was everything Dad should have been. When cancer took him last spring, he left me everything. 47 acres of prime farmland, a house, and enough money to keep it running. Dad showed up to the funeral with his new family, Veronica, their daughter Chloe, and the audacity to cry over the man he'd disappointed for 2 decades. 3 weeks ago, he called. Chloe needs a fresh start, he said, like we were old friends catching up. She's had some trouble at school. Thought maybe working the farm would straighten her out. I laughed until I realized he was serious. And legally, he continued, I should have inherited half that land. I'm being generous, only asking for a third. The thing about Chloe? She's 19, dropped out of 3 colleges, and posted Instagram stories from Cancun the week of Grandpa's funeral. But Dad insisted she was finding herself and needed stability. I hung up on him. Then the letters from his lawyer started arriving. Allegations that Grandpa wasn't mentally competent when he changed his will. Claims that I'd manipulated a dying man. Threats to drag this through court until the legal fees forced me to sell. Mom begged me to give in. Just offer her something small. Make this go away. But Grandpa's voice echoed in my head. That land stays with people who work it. Last night, I was reviewing security footage from the farm. We'd had some equipment vandalized recently when I saw something interesting. A familiar Mercedes parked by the back gate at 2 a.m. Chloe getting out with someone I didn't recognize. They spent an hour near the storage sheds where we keep the expensive machinery. I kept watching. This wasn't the first time. I pulled 3 months of footage. Chloe had been visiting my property for weeks before Dad ever called. Always at night. Always with different people. Always near the sheds or the greenhouse where I'd been experimenting with specialty crops. This morning, I found what they'd been doing. The greenhouse lock was picked, poorly. Inside, my experimental hemp plants were gone. 6 months of careful cultivation, perfectly legal with my license, worth about $30,000 if sold properly. Or worth much more if someone was pretending they were something else entirely. I have it all on video. Chloe stealing. Chloe with bags of my plants. Chloe meeting with people I've since identified as having drug-related arrests. She wasn't troubled, she was calculating. And Dad? The timestamps show he called me about giving her a job exactly 1 day after her first nighttime visit. This was planned. I sat in my kitchen, laptop open to the security footage, phone in my hand. 1 call to the sheriff would end this. Chloe would face theft charges, possibly worse if they could prove intent to distribute. Dad would be humiliated. His perfect second family would implode. But then I found something else in Grandpa's office. A letter he never sent, dated a month before he died, addressed to Dad. The letter was short. I know what you did to the Brennan family's property in '98. The statute of limitations may have passed, but that family still owns the newspaper. Come near my land again and everyone will know. The Brennan property. I remembered something about a fire when I was young. Their farm mysteriously burned down right before Dad left us. I researched all night. The Brennans had been competing with Dad's business. The fire was ruled accidental, but they had to sell. Dad bought their land for pennies, then flipped it 6 months later for 10 times what he paid. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A photo of me at the farmhouse taken this morning with a telephoto lens. The message read, your sister needs that job. Don't make this difficult. They were watching me. I walked to the window, stared out at the orchards Grandpa and I had tended together. Somewhere out there, someone was waiting to see what I'd do. That's when I noticed the fresh tire tracks leading to the old barn. The one I never use. The one that's been locked for years. The lock was cut. Inside, I found Chloe. She was sitting on an overturned crate, scrolling through her phone like she owned the place. Behind her, stacked against the wall, were boxes. Dozens of them. I recognized the logo on the side. The fertilizer company that had gone out of business 3 years ago. The same company Dad had worked for before he left. She looked up when my shadow crossed the doorway. No surprise, no guilt. Just that same entitled smirk I'd seen at Grandpa's funeral. Took you long enough, she said. My hand tightened around the crowbar I'd grabbed from the workshop. Not to use, just to have. Get off my property. She stood, dusting off her designer jeans. Technically, it's half Dad's property, which means it's kind of mine too. You've been stealing from me for months. Borrowing, she corrected. And those plants were barely worth anything anyway. You should be thanking me for taking them off your hands before you got in trouble with them. The gaslighting was impressive, almost as impressive as her complete lack of self-awareness. I have video of everything. You and your friends, the greenhouse, the storage sheds, all of it. That made her pause, just for a second. So what? She said, recovering quickly. You gonna call the cops on your own sister? That'll look great in court when we're fighting over Grandpa's will. I stepped closer. She stepped back. What's in the boxes, Chloe? Nothing that concerns you. I walked past her and grabbed the nearest box. It was heavier than I expected. I pulled out my pocket knife and sliced through the tape. Inside were documents, hundreds of them. Property deeds, financial statements, insurance claims, all dated from the late 90s, all related to the Brennan farm. And there, at the bottom, was a file labeled contingency. I opened it. The first page was a contract between Dad and someone named Vincent Torres. The second page was a timeline of events leading up to the Brennan fire. The third page was a series of photographs showing Dad at the Brennan property on the night of the fire, holding what looked like gasoline cans. My stomach dropped. Grandpa hadn't been bluffing. Dad had burned down the Brennan farm, and he'd kept evidence of it all these years. You shouldn't have opened that, Chloe said quietly. I looked up. She was holding a gun. Small caliber, probably a .22, but lethal enough at this distance. My mind went blank. Then it kicked into overdrive. Where did you get that? Dad keeps it in the glove compartment for emergencies. This isn't an emergency, Chloe. This is you breaking into my property and threatening me. No, she said, her hand shaking slightly. This is me protecting my family. Dad said you'd try to destroy us with whatever Grandpa left behind. He said we needed to get it first. So that's what this has been about? Not the land? Not the money? The evidence? She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. Crocodile tears, probably. She'd learned from the best. Dad made mistakes, but he's trying to fix them now. He's trying to build something better for all of us. But you're just like Grandpa. You'd rather burn everything down than let him have a second chance. The irony wasn't lost on me. Grandpa gave him 18 years of second chances. Dad chose not to take them. Because Grandpa never forgave him. Because people like you and him never let anyone move on from their mistakes. Her voice cracked. The gun wavered. I took a slow breath, measured my options. The barn door was 12 feet behind me. Chloe was 8 feet away. If I ran, she'd have at least 2 clear shots before I made it outside. If I rushed her, I'd need to cover 8 feet before she could pull the trigger. Neither option was good, so I went with option 3. I kept her talking. If Dad wanted to move on, why did he keep all this evidence? Why hide it in my barn? He didn't hide it here. Grandpa did. That stopped me cold. What? Grandpa took these documents from Dad's house the night he confronted him about the fire. Dad thought he destroyed them all, but Grandpa kept them. As insurance. To make sure Dad never came back. I thought about the letter, the threat, the decades of silence between them. And now Dad wants them back. Now Dad needs them back, she corrected. Because Vincent Torres is out of prison, and he's looking for his cut of the money Dad made from the Brennan property. Money that's long gone. The pieces clicked together. Dad hadn't just burned down a farm. He'd done it with a partner who'd gone to prison for something else and was now out, looking for payment. So Dad sent you to steal evidence that could put him in prison for arson and conspiracy. Dad sent me to protect our family from a dangerous criminal. By committing more crimes. She laughed bitterly. You really don't get it, do you? This isn't about right or wrong. This is about survival. Torres will kill Dad if he doesn't get his money. He'll kill all of us. Then go to the police. And tell them what? That my father committed arson 27 years ago? That he's being blackmailed by his former partner? They'd arrest Dad and leave us defenseless against Torres. So your solution is to steal evidence, threaten me with a gun, and what? Hope this all goes away? My solution is to give Torres what he wants. Dad's been trying to put together the money, but it's taking time. We just need you to stay out of the way long enough for him to make it happen. And the land? The inheritance? That was Dad's backup plan. If he could get a piece of the property, he could take out a loan against it. Use that money to pay off Torres. The audacity. The absolute audacity. So you were never interested in a fresh start. You were never interested in working the farm. This was always about Dad's debt to a criminal. Chloe's face hardened. This was always about family, something you clearly don't understand. I understand that family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't manipulate and threaten and lie. Family protects each other, she shot back. Even when they've made mistakes, even when it's hard. That's what Dad's doing for me. That's what I'm doing for him. And what about what he did to me? To Mom? To Grandpa? Ancient history. You need to let it go. My laugh came out harsh. Let it go? He abandoned us. He let Mom struggle to pay bills while he was building his new perfect life. He never called, never visited, never sent a dime in child support. And now he wants me to just hand over the only thing Grandpa left me so he can pay off some criminal? Grandpa left you everything because he was a bitter old man who couldn't forgive. Grandpa left me everything because I was there, because I showed up, because I earned it. My voice echoed in the barn. Chloe flinched but kept the gun trained on me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I heard it. The crunch of gravel outside, footsteps approaching. Chloe heard it too. Her eyes widened. Did you call someone? She demanded. No. The barn door opened. A man stepped inside. Late 40s, lean build, prison tattoos on his forearms. His eyes swept the barn and landed on the boxes. Well, he said, his voice rough from cigarettes. Looks like I found the right place. Vincent Torres. Chloe swung the gun toward him. Her hands were shaking badly now. Stay back, she said. Torres smiled. It wasn't friendly. Put the gun down, kid. You're not going to shoot anybody. I will if you come closer. He took a step forward. She pulled the trigger. The click was deafening in its emptiness. Torres's smile widened. Did Daddy forget to tell you he keeps the gun unloaded? Safety precaution. Can't have accidents with kids in the car. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and yanked the gun from her hands. Chloe stumbled backward, hit the boxes, and fell. Torres turned to me. You must be the granddaughter. The one who inherited everything. I gripped the crowbar tighter. You need to leave. Can't do that. Not until I get what I'm owed. He gestured at the boxes. Your grandfather was smart, kept insurance all these years. Now that insurance is going to pay me what your daddy owes. Those documents would send you both to prison. Maybe. But they'd also make great leverage. Your daddy's got a nice business now. Nice family. Nice reputation. He'll pay anything to keep that intact. He doesn't have the money. Then he'll get it. People find money when their lives depend on it. He glanced at Chloe, who was still on the floor, crying. Both their lives. The threat was clear. How much? I asked. 200,000. Plus interest. Call it 300 grand total. He'll never have that kind of money. Then I guess I'll have to start selling off pieces of his life. Maybe his business. Maybe his house. Maybe his daughter. He smiled at Chloe. I know some people who'd pay good money for a pretty girl who's already proven she's willing to break the law. Rage flooded through me. Hot and clean and clarifying. You're not touching her. Torres raised an eyebrow. That's sweet. Protecting your sister after she just tried to rob you. She's 19 and stupid. You're a grown man who preys on desperate people. I'm a businessman collecting a debt. You're a criminal who committed arson and is now committing extortion. His expression darkened. Careful. I don't need you alive to make this work. I believed him. Everything about him screamed violence barely contained. But I also knew something he didn't. While we'd been talking, I'd been slowly reaching into my pocket. My phone was there, already unlocked. Already on the recording app I'd opened before entering the barn. Everything he'd said was documented. And more importantly, I'd pressed the emergency button that sent my location and a distress signal to the sheriff's department. A feature I'd set up after the first time equipment got vandalized. I just needed to keep him talking for another few minutes. The fire, I said. Was it your idea or Dad's? Torres laughed. Your old man was always the brains. I was just the muscle. He figured out the Brennan's insurance was about to lapse. Figured if their farm burned down right before renewal, they'd be ruined. We split the profit when he bought the land cheap and flipped it. But you got caught. Different crime, different time. But I never forgot what I was owed. And now you're out, and you want your cut. Now I'm out, and I'm collecting what's mine. In the distance, barely audible, I heard sirens. Torres heard them too. His head snapped toward the door. What did you do? What I should have done the moment I found Chloe here. I called for help. He lunged toward me. I swung the crowbar. It connected with his shoulder. He howled and stumbled back. Chloe screamed. Torres recovered faster than I expected. He came at me again, and this time I wasn't quick enough. He grabbed the crowbar, yanked it from my hands, and threw it across the barn. Then his fist connected with my jaw. I went down hard, tasted blood, saw stars. He stood over me, breathing heavy. Stupid girl. You just made this so much worse. The sirens were getting louder. He knew he was running out of time. He grabbed one of the boxes and headed for the door, then stopped. Came back for a second box, and a third. By the time the sheriff's cruisers pulled into the driveway, Torres was loading the last box into a truck I hadn't noticed parked on the access road. I tried to get up, couldn't. Everything was spinning. Chloe crawled over to me. Are you okay? Been better, I managed. She pressed her hands against my face. They were cold and shaking. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was going to. I didn't think. I know, and I did. Looking at her now, terrified, crying, 19 and in way over her head, I saw someone who'd been used by everyone around her, including me in a way. I'd been so focused on my own anger at Dad that I hadn't considered what kind of person he'd shaped Chloe into. The sheriff burst through the barn door, gun drawn. Sheriff's department, show me your hands. I raised mine. Chloe did the same. He went out the back, I said, my words slurring. Driving a gray truck. He has evidence of a crime from 1998, and he just assaulted me. The sheriff, a woman in her 50s named Patricia Mendoza, who'd known Grandpa well, holstered her weapon and knelt beside me. Ambulance is 2 minutes out. Can you tell me what happened? I told her everything. The security footage, the stolen plants, the boxes, Torres, all of it. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she stood and spoke into her radio. Suspect is Vincent Torres, white male, late 40s, driving a gray pickup truck headed south on County Road 17. Suspect is armed and dangerous. Has evidence related to the Brennan Farm fire of 1998. There was a burst of static, then confirmation from multiple units. Mendoza looked at Chloe. And you are? Chloe. I'm her half-sister. Were you working with Torres? No. I didn't know he was coming. I was just trying to get the boxes before. She stopped, realizing she was confessing. Before what? Chloe looked at me. I nodded. She needed to tell the truth. All of it. Before anyone found out what my dad did, he sent me to get the documents. He said if Torres found them first, he'd use them against us. I didn't know how to pick locks, so I hired some people to help. And I took the plants because I needed money to pay them. Mendoza's expression didn't change. Where's your father now? At home, I think. With my mom. Address? Chloe gave it to her. Mendoza relayed the information to another unit. The ambulance arrived. EMTs rushed in with a stretcher. One of them, a young guy named Trevor who I'd gone to high school with, gently examined my jaw. Definitely gonna bruise, he said. Might be broken. We need to get you to the hospital for x-rays. I need to give my statement first. You can do that at the hospital, Mendoza said. I'll ride with you. They loaded me onto the stretcher. As they carried me past Chloe, I reached out and grabbed her hand. Tell them everything, I said. The truth, all of it. It's the only way this gets better. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. At the hospital, they confirmed my jaw wasn't broken but was badly bruised. I'd have a spectacular black eye by morning. They gave me ice packs and pain medication and told me to eat soft foods for a week. Mendoza took my statement while I was being treated. I showed her the security footage on my laptop, showed her the letter from Grandpa, told her about Dad's phone calls and the lawyer's letters. This is going to get complicated, she said when I finished. Multiple crimes across multiple decades. But with your evidence and Chloe's testimony, we should be able to build a solid case. What happens to Chloe? That depends on the DA. She's young, she was coerced by her father, and she's cooperating. Might get community service and probation if she's lucky. And Dad? Conspiracy, extortion, destruction of evidence, endangering a minor. Mendoza ticked them off on her fingers. Plus, whatever comes out about the Brennan fire once we analyze those documents Torres took. Did you catch him? Not yet, but we will. Man like that doesn't know how to disappear. They kept me overnight for observation. Mom showed up around midnight, frantic. She held my hand and cried and apologized for telling me to give in to Dad's demands. I just wanted it to be over, she said. I didn't want you to suffer more because of him. I know. I should have protected you better. Back then. Now. All of it. You did the best you could. She shook her head. A mother's best should be better than that. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, Grandpa would be proud of you. Standing up for yourself. For the land. For what's right. I'm not sure anything about this is right. Doing the hard thing rarely feels right in the moment. That's what makes it hard. The next morning, they released me. Mom drove me back to the farm. The barn was cordoned off with police tape. An evidence team was photographing everything. I sat on the porch and watched them work. Everything Grandpa built. Everything I'd tried to protect. And it still ended in violence and theft and family turning against family. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then thought better of it. Hello? Is this the granddaughter? A woman's voice. Older. Uncertain. Who's asking? My name is Patricia Brennan. I think we need to talk. My heart stuttered. How did you get this number? Sheriff Mendoza gave it to me. She said you might be willing to hear what I have to say. I should have hung up. Should have let the lawyers handle everything. But something in her voice stopped me. I'm listening. I know what your father did. To my family. To my parents' farm. Sheriff Mendoza told me about the evidence you found. She paused. But there's more to the story. Things my family never told the police. Things that might help you understand why your grandfather kept those documents all these years. What kind of things? The kind that should be said in person. I'm in town for a few days. Staying at the Riverside Inn. Would you be willing to meet? Every instinct told me to say no. To keep my distance. To let the authorities sort this out. But I thought about Grandpa. About the letter he never sent. About secrets kept and truths buried. Tomorrow morning, I said. The coffee shop on Main Street, 10 o'clock. Thank you, she said quietly. I know this isn't easy. She had no idea. That evening, Mendoza called with an update. They'd caught Torres trying to cross state lines. The boxes were recovered intact, and Dad had been arrested at his house. He lawyered up immediately, Mendoza said. But Chloe's statement is damning. Along with your evidence, we have a solid case. What about Veronica? Claims she knew nothing about any of it. We're still investigating, but so far there's no evidence she was involved. Poor Veronica. Married to a criminal and didn't even know it. Or maybe she did and was just good at playing innocent. Either way, her perfect life was imploding. One more thing, Mendoza said. We found something interesting in the documents. The insurance policy your grandfather took out on the Brennan farm made himself the beneficiary. When the farm burned down, he collected the payout. My stomach dropped. What? Your grandfather profited from the fire too. Not as much as your father, but enough that it raises questions about what he knew and when he knew it. No, that couldn't be right. Grandpa would never. I'm just telling you what we found. The DA will want to talk to you about it. After she hung up, I sat in Grandpa's office surrounded by his things, his books, his photographs, his decades of accumulated life. Had he been involved? Had he taken advantage of the Brennan fire? Had he kept those documents not as evidence against Dad, but as insurance for himself? I wanted to believe he was innocent, that there was an explanation, that the man who raised me wasn't capable of profiting from someone else's tragedy. But I'd learned enough about family secrets to know that nobody's hands were completely clean. The next morning, I met Patricia Brennan at the coffee shop. She was in her 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes that looked like they'd seen too much suffering. We ordered coffee and sat in a corner booth. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "Your grandfather came to see me 2 weeks before he died." I went still. He was sick, could barely walk, but he drove all the way to my house and sat in my kitchen and told me everything. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. About the fire, about your father, about his own role in what happened. What was his role? He suspected your father was planning something, saw him meeting with Torres, overheard phone calls, but he didn't want to believe his own son could do something so terrible. So he took out an insurance policy on our farm, told himself it was just in case, that he was being paranoid, but he wasn't paranoid. No. And when the fire happened, when my family lost everything, your grandfather knew. He knew what your father had done, but he didn't go to the police. He collected the insurance money and used it to expand his own farm. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than anything Dad had done. Why are you telling me this? Because your grandfather wanted me to know the truth, wanted to make it right before he died. He offered me the money back, every penny, plus interest, but I wouldn't take it. Why not? Because money wouldn't bring back my parents, wouldn't erase the years of struggle, wouldn't heal the damage done. She looked at me directly, but he gave me something else, something more valuable. What? A promise. He promised that his land, the land he built with blood money, would go to someone who would use it for good, someone who would honor what it cost, someone who would make it mean something. Tears burned in my eyes. He left it to me. He said you were the only person he trusted to carry that weight, that you understood the value of showing up, of doing the work, of making amends. I don't know how to make amends for something I didn't do. None of us do, but we try anyway. That's what separates us from people like your father and Torres. We try. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Your grandfather wrote this for you. Asked me to give it to you if you ever came looking for the truth. I took the envelope with shaking hands. My name was written on the front in Grandpa's cramped handwriting. Patricia stood. I should go. I just wanted you to know that your grandfather wasn't perfect, but he tried to be better. That's more than most people do. After she left, I sat alone in the booth and opened the envelope. Dear girl, if you're reading this, then Patricia found you. And if she found you, then you've discovered the worst thing about me. I could make excuses, tell you I was conflicted, that I didn't want to believe my own son could burn down a family's livelihood, that I thought the insurance policy was just paranoia. But the truth is simpler and uglier. I chose money over morality. I chose my own comfort over another family's suffering. And I've lived with that shame every day since. Your father left us when you were 7. I let him go without a fight because I knew what he was capable of. I knew what he'd done. And I was terrified that if he stayed, you'd become like him. Or worse. That you'd discover what I'd done and realize the rot went deeper than one generation. For 18 years, I tried to make it right. I worked that land harder than I should have. Built it into something valuable. Something that could do good if it was in the right hands. And then I got sick. And I knew I was running out of time. I'm leaving you everything because I believe you're strong enough to carry this weight. Smart enough to know what to do with it. Good enough to make better choices than I did. The land is yours. Do with it what you think is right. But know this, whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. You showed up when it mattered. You stayed when others left. You became the person I wish I'd been. That's worth more than 47 acres or any amount of money. Love you, kid. Grandpa. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. Then I paid for my coffee, walked out to my truck, and drove to the farm. The evidence team was gone. The police tape was still up, but the barn was empty except for ghosts. I stood in the middle of Grandpa's land, his blood money, his burden, his attempt at redemption, and made my decision. 3 weeks later, I sat in a lawyer's office with Patricia Brennan and her daughter. Are you sure about this? The lawyer asked. I'm sure. The papers were drawn up. The land would be placed in a trust. Half the profits from the farm would go to a foundation in the Brennan family's name, dedicated to helping families recover from property disasters. The other half would fund the operation and expansion of the farm itself. I'd run it, make the decisions, do the work. But I wouldn't own it. Not entirely. Not anymore. Patricia's daughter, a woman named Ruth who'd become a lawyer herself, reviewed the documents. This is incredibly generous. It's incredibly overdue, I corrected. We signed the papers, shook hands, made it legal. As they were leaving, Patricia turned back. Your grandfather would be proud. I hope so. The trial took 9 months to work through the system. Dad was convicted on multiple counts of conspiracy, extortion, and obstruction of justice. The statute of limitations had expired on the arson, but the evidence was damning enough to destroy his reputation completely. He got 6 years. With good behavior, he'd be out in 4. Chloe got probation and community service. The judge was lenient, noting her age and the coercive influence of her father. She moved in with Veronica, who divorced Dad the day after his arrest. Torres got 15 years for the assault, the extortion, and violations related to his parole. Mom came to every court date. sat beside me in the gallery, held my hand when the verdicts were read. "How do you feel?" she asked after it was all over. "Tired. I can't imagine." We drove back to the farm in silence. The orchards were in full bloom, the greenhouse had been rebuilt. The foundation was already funding its first 3 recipients, families who'd lost homes to fires, floods, and foreclosures. "Grandpa's rolling in his grave," Mom said, looking at all the changes. "Good. He should be uncomfortable. We all should be. Comfort is how people like Dad justify their choices." She smiled sadly. "When did you get so wise?" "When I stopped pretending family meant anything more than the people who show up." We walked through the orchards together, and I told her my plans for the future. Expanding the specialty crops, building a farmer's market on the property, creating apprenticeships for young people who wanted to learn agriculture. "That's a lot of work," she said. "Grandpa always said the land stays with people who work it." He did say that. Then I guess I'd better get to work. 5 years later, the farm is thriving. The foundation has helped 83 families. The apprenticeship program has trained 27 young farmers. The farmer's market happens every Saturday and draws people from 3 counties. Chloe works here now, not because Dad demanded it, not because of some legal arrangement, but because she asked. She started by doing basic labor, weeding, harvesting, helping at the market. Then she took courses in agricultural business. Now she manages the market and coordinates with the foundation. We're not close. Probably never will be. Too much history, too much hurt. But we're civil. We're respectful. We show up. Dad writes letters from prison. I don't open them. Chloe does. She says he's sorry, that he's changed, that he wants to make amends when he gets out. I tell her that's between them. Torres is still in prison. Will be for another 8 years. I don't think about him much. Veronica remarried, moved to Arizona, sends Chloe birthday cards. Mom lives in town now, comes by for dinner once a week. We don't talk about Dad. We talk about the farm, about her book club, about the ordinary miracle of moving forward. Sometimes I walk through the orchards at sunset and think about Grandpa, about his choices, about his attempts at redemption, about whether leaving me this burden was a gift or a curse. I've decided it's both, like most things worth having. The land stays with people who work it, people who show up, people who try to be better than the generation before them. I'm still trying, every day. That's all any of us can do. Last week, Patricia Brennan's granddaughter applied for the apprenticeship program. She's 22, just graduated with a degree in sustainable agriculture, and wants to learn about specialty crop management. I accepted her application immediately. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Mom asked when I told her. "What if it brings up old wounds?" "It's the best idea," I said. "We've been carrying old wounds long enough. Time to plant something new." Her name is Diana. She starts next month. I'm looking forward to it. To teaching someone who comes from loss how to build something that lasts, to honoring both the pain and the possibility that this land represents, to showing up every day, no matter how hard it gets, because that's what Grandpa taught me, not through his words or his perfect example, but through his mistakes and his attempts to fix them. Blood doesn't mean shit if you don't show up, and I'm still showing up every single day. The morning Diana arrived for her first day, I was in the greenhouse checking on the tomato seedlings. Early June sunlight streamed through the glass panels, and the air smelled like earth and potential. She knocked on the door frame even though it was open, polite, careful, like someone who'd learned early that taking up space could be dangerous. "Hi, I'm Diana Brennan. I'm supposed to start today?" Up close, she looked younger than 22. Dark hair pulled back in a practical braid, work boots that had actually seen work, eyes that assessed everything without seeming to judge. "I remember. You're Patricia's granddaughter." "Yeah." She shifted her weight. "Is that going to be a problem? Should it be?" "I don't know. My grandmother told me about what happened with your grandfather, with the fire. I understand if you'd rather not have me here." I wiped my hands on my jeans and faced her directly. "Your family lost everything because of choices my grandfather and father made. The fact that you're willing to work this land despite that history tells me you're braver than most people." Her shoulders relaxed slightly. "I'm not brave. I just want to learn. Same thing, usually." I showed her around the property. The orchards where we grew 6 varieties of apples and 3 of pears. The fields where we rotated crops seasonally, squash and pumpkins in fall, berries in summer, root vegetables in spring. The greenhouse where I experimented with specialty herbs and heirloom tomatoes. She asked good questions. Technical ones about soil composition and pest management. Practical ones about market demand and pricing. Smart ones about long-term sustainability. By lunch, I knew she'd be an asset. By the end of the first week, I knew she'd be more than that. Diana had what Grandpa used to call dirt sense. An intuitive understanding of what plants needed before they showed obvious signs of distress. She could look at a row of seedlings and identify which ones wouldn't thrive, could adjust irrigation schedules based on subtle changes in soil moisture, could predict weather patterns by watching how the leaves turned. "You've done this before," I said one afternoon while we were weeding the herb garden. "My grandmother taught me, before she got too sick to work her own garden." Diana pulled a stubborn dandelion root. She said growing things was the only way she stayed sane after the fire, that watching seeds become plants reminded her that destruction doesn't have to be permanent. I thought about Grandpa's letter, about redemption and second chances and the stubborn hope that we could be better than our worst moments. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. Diana's voice caught. "She died 2 months ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. She talked about you, near the end. Said you reminded her of your grandfather in the good ways. Said you understood that land remembers everything we do to it, good and bad. I'm not sure I understand anything that profound." Diana smiled. "She also said you'd say something like that." We worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Diana asked, "Why did you really accept my application?" It would have been easier to say no. I sat back on my heels, considering. "Because I'm tired of carrying other people's mistakes. Because I want this place to mean something besides guilt and shame. Because your grandmother showed me that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to build something new with the pieces of what was broken. That's a lot of pressure to put on farming. Farming is all about pressure. Pressure from weather, markets, pests, time. The question is whether you let it crush you or use it to make something stronger." Diana nodded slowly. "Grandmother said something similar. She said pressure makes diamonds or dust depending on what you're made of." Smart woman. the smartest. Over the next few months, Diana became essential to the farm's operation. She reorganized the greenhouse to maximize light exposure. She developed a composting system that reduced our waste by 60%. She created a crop rotation schedule that improved soil quality while increasing yield. And she asked questions. Lots of them. About Grandpa. About the fire. About what it was like growing up knowing your family had destroyed someone else's life. I answered honestly. Told her about the guilt that woke me up at 3 a.m. About the constant fear that I'd make the same selfish choices. About the weight of trying to make amends for sins I didn't commit. But you didn't commit them, she pointed out one evening while we were closing up the greenhouse. Why should you have to make amends? Because I benefited from them. This land, this life, all of it was built on your family's suffering. And now you're using it to help other families? Isn't that enough? I don't know if it'll ever be enough. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Grandmother told me something before she died. She said your grandfather came to see her one last time, brought her a check for everything he'd taken, plus interest. She tore it up in front of him. I know, she told me. But what she didn't tell you was what she said to him after. She said, I don't want your money. I want you to raise that granddaughter to understand that every choice we make either adds to the world's suffering or reduces it. Make her understand that. My throat tightened. He did. I know. That's why I'm here. We locked up and walked back to the main house. The sun was setting over the orchards, painting everything gold and purple. I'm glad you're here, I said. Me too. 6 months into Diana's apprenticeship, Chloe asked to talk to me privately. We met at the farmhouse after hours, sitting on the porch where Grandpa used to shell peas and tell stories about drought years and bumper crops. I'm thinking about going back to school, Chloe said without preamble. That's good. For agriculture. Business management with a focus on sustainable farming. I raised an eyebrow. Seriously? I know. It surprised me too. She twisted her hands together. But working here, watching what you've built, seeing how the foundation helps people, it made me realize I want to do something that matters. Not just for me, for everyone. What does Veronica think? She's supportive. Confused, but supportive. She still doesn't really understand why I want to work in the dirt when I could go into law or medicine or something respectable. Farming is respectable. Try telling that to someone who thinks respectable means a corner office and a 6-figure salary. I laughed despite myself. Fair point. Chloe was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think Dad would be proud of me? Of this? The question caught me off guard. I thought about Dad in prison, about the choices he'd made, about the man who'd valued money over morality and paid the price. I don't know, but I think Grandpa would be. Her eyes filled with tears. I barely knew him. He barely knew you either. That was Dad's choice, not yours. But if Grandpa could see you now, working hard, trying to build something good, showing up every day, yeah, he'd be proud. She wiped her eyes. Thanks. Don't thank me. Just keep showing up. I will. Chloe enrolled in the State Agricultural College that fall. She came back weekends to work at the farm and help with the farmer's market. Slowly, carefully, we built something that resembled a relationship. Not sisterhood, exactly. More like colleagues who shared a complicated history. It was enough. The foundation continued to grow. By the 3rd year, we'd expanded to include not just families recovering from disasters, but also young farmers who needed startup capital. We created microloans for equipment purchases. We established mentorship programs connecting experienced farmers with newcomers. We built a network of support that extended across 3 states. Ruth Brennan, Patricia's daughter, the lawyer, joined the foundation's board. She brought expertise in agricultural law and helped us navigate the complex regulations around land trusts and charitable giving. Your grandfather created a mess, she told me at one board meeting, but you're turning it into something remarkable. I'm trying. Trying is all any of us can do. One afternoon in late September, 4 years after taking over the farm, I got a call from the prison. Dad wanted to see me. He was up for early release and needed family support at his parole hearing. I hung up without answering. An hour later, Veronica called. Please, just think about it. He's changed. People don't change. They just get better at hiding who they've always been. That's not fair. You don't know what he's been through. And he doesn't know what we've been through because of his choices. He's Chloe's father. She wants to support him at the hearing. It would mean a lot if you came too. Then it'll mean a lot when I don't. I hung up and went back to work, pulled weeds with more force than necessary, muttered to myself about audacity and entitlement, and the never-ending demands of people who'd given up the right to make demands. Diana found me an hour later, sweating and furious in the tomato patch. Want to talk about it? No. She sat down anyway. Didn't say anything. Just sat there while I destroyed perfectly innocent weeds. Finally, I said, my father wants me to support him at his parole hearing. Are you going to? Hell no. Okay. That's it? Just okay? She shrugged. It's your choice. Your family. Your history. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Everyone else is. I'm not everyone else. We sat in silence while I calmed down. Then Diana said, my father walked out when I was 6. Said he couldn't handle the pressure of a family. Last year, he reached out wanting to reconnect. Said he'd grown, changed, found himself. What did you do? Told him I was glad he found himself, but I didn't need him anymore. I'd already found myself without him. Did that make you feel better? Made me feel free. Like I wasn't carrying his choices anymore. Just my own. I thought about that. About freedom and choice and the weight of other people's expectations. I don't want to go to the hearing. Then don't. But Chloe can make her own choices. So can you. Simple, clear, true. I didn't go to the parole hearing. Chloe did. Veronica did. Some of Dad's former business partners who believed in second chances did. The parole board voted to release him after serving 4.5 years. He called me the day he got out. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message saying he understood if I wasn't ready to talk, but hoped someday I'd give him a chance to apologize properly. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. 3 weeks later, he showed up at the farm. I was in the greenhouse when Chloe came running in. He's here. Dad's here. I didn't know he was coming. I swear I didn't know. My first instinct was to call the sheriff. My second was to grab the shotgun Grandpa kept for coyotes. My third was to walk out there and face him like an adult. I went with option 3. He was standing by his car, not the luxury sedan he used to drive, but a beat-up Honda that had seen better decades. He'd aged dramatically. Gray hair, deep lines around his eyes, shoulders that curved inward like he'd spent too long trying to make himself smaller. "Hi," he said when he saw me. "You need to leave." "I know, I will. I just wanted to say something first. I don't want to hear it." "I know that too, but I'm going to say it anyway." He took a breath. "I'm sorry. For everything. For leaving when you were 7. For not being there when Mom died. For trying to steal your inheritance. For putting Chloe in danger. For every selfish choice I made that hurt you." The words hung in the air between us. Empty, meaningless, too little and far too late. "Okay, you said it. Now leave." "That's it? Just okay? What do you want? Forgiveness? Absolution? A relationship?" He stopped. Started again. "I want you to know I understand why you hate me. Why you'll probably always hate me. And I accept that. I deserve that." "You're right, you do." He flinched like I'd hit him. "Good. But I also want you to know that seeing what you've built here, hearing about the foundation, watching Chloe turn her life around because of your example, it makes me realize just how much I lost. Not the land or the money. You. I lost you. And that's the one thing I can never get back." "No, you can't." He nodded slowly, looked around at the farm, at the orchards, at the greenhouse, at everything Grandpa and I had built, and everything I was trying to become. "He'd be proud of you," Dad said quietly. "I know. And his voice broke. "I'm proud of you too, for what it's worth. It's not worth much. I know." He got back in his car, paused with the door open. "Chloe told me about the Brennan girl, about you hiring her, about the foundation helping her family. That took guts. It took basic decency. To you, maybe. To most people, it would have taken more." He drove away. I stood there watching until the dust settled on the driveway. Chloe approached cautiously. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I really didn't know he was coming." "I believe you. He's staying with friends in town, trying to find work. He asked if I thought you'd ever speak to him again." "What did you tell him?" "That it wasn't my place to say. That you'd make your own choices." Smart answer. Diana had trained her well. "Are you going to have a relationship with him?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe. Carefully. With a lot of boundaries." She looked at me. "Does that bother you?" "No. He's your father. You get to decide what that means. And if I want him at the farm sometimes, to see what we're doing?" Every instinct screamed no. But I thought about Grandpa's letter. About making better choices. About breaking cycles. If he comes, he works. No special treatment. No access to finances or decision-making. He's just labor. Really? Really. But the first time he tries to manipulate, criticize, or undermine anything we're doing here, he's gone permanently. Chloe threw her arms around me. "Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't thank me yet. I might regret this in an hour." But I didn't. Not entirely. Dad showed up the next Saturday. Wore work clothes. Brought his own gloves. Listened when I explained what needed doing. We didn't talk beyond basic instructions. He didn't try to bond or reminisce or weasel his way into my good graces. He just worked. Pulled weeds, hauled compost, fixed a broken fence post. At the end of the day, he said, "Same time next week? If you want. I want." It became a routine. Every Saturday, Dad showed up. Worked 8 hours, left without drama. Slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, we started talking. Nothing deep, just observations about weather and soil quality and which apple varieties were selling best at market. Then one day, about 6 months after his release, we were repairing the irrigation system and he said, "I talked to Torres's daughter." I looked up sharply. Why? She reached out through the prison correspondence program. Wanted to understand why her father did what he did. Why he made the choices that destroyed their family. And I told her the truth, that her father and I saw an opportunity to make money and didn't care who got hurt in the process, that we convinced ourselves the Brennans were competition who needed to be eliminated, that we justified evil by calling it business. He was quiet for a moment, hands working automatically to connect a damaged pipe. She asked if I regretted it. I told her I regretted getting caught, that for 27 years the only thing I regretted was that my crime had consequences for me, not for the Brennans, not for my family, just for me. And now I regret all of it, every choice. Every justification, every moment I chose money over morality. He looked at me directly. I told her that my greatest regret was losing my daughter, that nothing I gained was worth what I destroyed. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. We finished the repair in silence. Later, Diana asked me how I felt about Dad being around. Complicated. That's honest. He's trying. I can see that. But trying doesn't erase what he did. No, but it's something. Is it enough? She considered. That's not for me to decide. Only you can answer that. I thought about it for a long time. Weeks turned into months. Dad kept showing up, kept working, kept respecting boundaries. And slowly, carefully, I stopped hating him quite so much. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just a lessening of the sharp edges. It was something. The farm continued to thrive. Diana completed her apprenticeship and asked to stay on as operations manager. Chloe graduated with honors and took over the foundation's day-to-day management. Ruth Brennan helped us expand into 2 additional states. 5 years became 7. 7 became 10. And somewhere in there, I realized I'd built something that mattered, not despite the pain and betrayal and complicated family history, but because of it. The land Grandpa left me had become more than property. It was proof that redemption was possible, that mistakes didn't have to define us, that showing up mattered more than being perfect. Mom came by one Sunday for dinner. We sat on the porch, same place Grandpa used to shell peas, and watched the sunset paint the orchards gold. "He'd be proud," she said. "You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true." She squeezed my hand. "You took something broken and made it beautiful." I had help. The best things always require help. Dad pulled up in his Honda. He'd been living in town for 3 years now. Had a job at the hardware store, rented a small apartment, built a quiet, humble life. He and Mom exchanged brief, polite greetings. They'd never fully reconciled. Probably never would. But they'd learned to be civil for Chloe's sake, for my sake, for the sake of moving forward. "I brought pie," Dad said, holding up a bakery box. "What kind?" I asked. "Apple." Seemed appropriate. We ate pie on the porch while the sun set. Made small talk about weather and harvest yields and the new family the foundation had helped last week. It wasn't warm, it wasn't close, but it was peaceful. and peace was something I'd learned to value more than perfection. After Dad and Mom left, I walked through the orchards one more time, checked on the trees, made mental notes about pruning and pest management, thought about next season's plans. The land had changed so much since Grandpa left it to me. New crops, new systems, new purpose, but the core remained the same: dirt and water and sunlight and work. I touched one of the older apple trees, one Grandpa had planted 30 years ago. The bark was rough under my palm, solid, enduring. I hope I'm doing okay, I said to the tree, to Grandpa, to whatever ghosts still walked these rows. The tree didn't answer, but the wind rustled its leaves, and somewhere in that sound, I heard what I needed to hear. Keep showing up, keep doing the work, keep building something that lasts. That was enough. That would always be enough. I walked back to the house as stars began appearing in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new opportunities to choose whether I'd add to the world's suffering or reduce it. But tonight, I was just tired, grateful, at peace with the complicated, messy, beautiful thing I'd built from the ashes of my family's worst mistakes. The land stays with people who work it, and I was still working, every single day. 2 years later, I got a call that changed everything again. It was Ruth Brennan, Patricia's daughter. Her voice was tight with controlled emotion. "We need to talk. In person. Can you come to my office?" "What's wrong?" "Just come, please." I drove to her law office in town, mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Had something happened with the foundation? Was there a legal issue with the trust? Had someone challenged Grandpa's will after all these years? Ruth's office was all dark wood and law books. Professional. Intimidating. She gestured for me to sit. "I received something yesterday, from a firm in Seattle. They're settling my mother's estate." I thought Patricia's estate was settled years ago. So did I. But apparently, she had a safety deposit box nobody knew about. The bank finally tracked me down. Ruth slid a manila envelope across the desk. Inside are documents, letters, photographs, things my mother kept secret her entire life. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The first item was a photograph from the 1990s. A younger Patricia Brennan standing next to someone I recognized immediately. Grandpa. They were smiling. His arm was around her shoulders. They looked comfortable together. Familiar. "I don't understand," I said. "Keep looking." The next photograph showed them at what looked like a county fair. Then another at a restaurant. Then one that made my stomach drop. Them kissing outside what I recognized as Grandpa's truck. "They were together," I whispered, "for 3 years, starting in 1995, 2 years before the fire." I flipped through more photographs. Letters in Grandpa's handwriting. Love letters. Promises to leave everything behind and start fresh together. Plans for a future that never happened. Then I found the final letter, dated 2 weeks after the fire. "Patricia, I can't see you anymore. What happened to your family's farm was my fault. Not directly, but I knew. I suspected what my son was planning, and I did nothing to stop it. I even took out that insurance policy thinking I was being smart, being prepared. I was being a coward. When your parents lost everything, when they had to sell and move away, I realized I'd destroyed any chance we had. How could I build a life with you knowing I'd profited from your family's suffering? I love you. I always will. But I can't be with you. Not after this. You deserve better than a man who chose money over morality, who chose silence over truth. I'm sorry for everything. James." I set the letter down with shaking hands. He loved her. He destroyed her family and loved her. Both things are true. Did she ever forgive him? Ruth's laugh was bitter. She tried. For years she tried. But every time she looked at the farm he built with blood money, she saw what could have been, what should have been, what he'd stolen from both of them. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because there's more." Ruth pulled out another document. "My mother's will was updated 6 months before she died, after your grandfather came to see her, after he tried to give her the money back." I read the document, then read it again, certain I'd misunderstood. "She left me her property? 5 acres just outside town. It's not much. Old farmhouse that needs work, land that hasn't been cultivated in decades. But she wanted you to have it. Why?" Read the note she attached. The note was in Patricia's shaky handwriting, written when illness had already taken its toll. To the granddaughter who showed up, "James broke my heart twice. Once when he chose silence over truth, once when he died before we could make peace. But you chose differently. You took the poison he left behind and turned it into medicine. You showed up for families like mine when nobody else did. You built something beautiful from something ugly. This land was going to be our fresh start, James's and mine, before everything fell apart. I can't give him that fresh start now, but I can give it to you. Build something good here. Something that honors what could have been. Something that proves love and loss can coexist with hope. Show up. Keep showing up." "Patricia." I couldn't speak. Tears blurred my vision. Ruth's voice was gentle. "You don't have to accept it. I'd understand if you didn't want more reminders of what happened." "No," I managed. "I want it. I'll honor it." "I thought you might say that." We sat in silence for a long moment. Then Ruth said, "My mother talked about your grandfather sometimes, near the end. Said he was the love of her life and the source of her greatest pain. Said some people are both at once. I'm learning that. She also said you were braver than both of them, that you'd found a way to carry the weight without letting it crush you. I don't feel brave. None of us do. That's what makes it brave." I left Ruth's office with the deed to 5 acres and a head full of questions. Drove straight to the property Patricia had left me. The farmhouse was exactly as Ruth described. Old, neglected, but solid. Good bones, as Grandpa would have said. I walked the land, trying to imagine what Grandpa and Patricia had envisioned here. What future they'd planned before everything collapsed. My phone rang. "Diana, where are you? We have 3 deliveries this afternoon." "I know. I'll be back in 20 minutes. I paused. "Diana, if you could build something from scratch, what would it be?" "What kind of question is that?" "A serious one." She was quiet, thinking. "A teaching farm. Somewhere people could come learn sustainable practices. See how food grows from seed to harvest. Understand where their meals come from. Would you help me build one?" "Where?" "I just inherited 5 acres. Old farmhouse. Blank slate." I could hear the smile in her voice. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow." That night, I gathered everyone at the main farmhouse. Mom, Chloe, Diana, Ruth, even Dad. I told them about Patricia's gift, about the letters and photographs, about Grandpa's secret love and the future that never happened. Mom cried. I never knew. Nobody did. He kept it hidden, probably out of shame. Dad spoke quietly. I knew, sort of. I saw them together once. Confronted him about it. He denied everything, but I knew. Is that why you burned down the Brennan farm? I asked, the pieces clicking together. Revenge? You wanted to destroy his relationship? No. God, no. I didn't even think about Patricia. I just saw an opportunity to make money. I was too selfish to consider anyone else's pain. He looked at me directly. But maybe subconsciously I wanted to hurt him, wanted to prove I could be more ruthless than he ever dared to be. Chloe reached for his hand. He gripped it like a lifeline. So, what are you going to do with the property? Mom asked. Build a teaching farm, create a place where people can learn where food comes from, how to grow it sustainably, how to heal by working with their hands and the earth. That's beautiful, Ruth said. It's ambitious, Diana corrected. 5 acres isn't much for a teaching farm. Then we'll make it work with what we have. Start small, grow slowly, build something that lasts. We? Diana raised an eyebrow. If you're interested, I can't do this alone. I'm interested. Over the next year, we transformed Patricia's property, cleared the overgrown fields, renovated the farmhouse into a classroom and demonstration kitchen, built raised beds for teaching basic gardening, installed a small orchard with fruit trees for long-term learning. We called it the Brennan Hope Teaching Farm, half Patricia's name, half what we wanted it to represent. The first workshop was a disaster. 3 people showed up, a retired teacher, a young couple, and someone who thought we were giving away free vegetables. The second workshop was better, 7 people. By the 5th workshop, we had a waiting list. People came from all over. Urban families wanting to teach their kids where food came from, retirees looking for purpose, young people searching for alternatives to corporate careers, veterans dealing with PTSD who found peace in working the soil. And slowly, story by story, we heard the same refrain. I didn't realize how disconnected I'd become from the earth, from my food, from myself. Diana developed a curriculum, started with basics, soil composition, companion planting, pest management, expanded to more complex topics like crop rotation, water conservation, season extension. But the real teaching happened in the quiet moments. When someone's first tomato plant produced fruit, when a child discovered that carrots grew underground, when a veteran spent 3 hours silently weeding and finally smiled. You know what this place is? Diana said one evening after a particularly good workshop. It's therapy disguised as farming, or farming that happens to be therapeutic. Same thing. We were sitting on the farmhouse porch, Patricia's porch, watching students harvest lettuce in the fading light. Do you think your grandfather would approve? Diana asked. I think he'd be relieved. He spent his whole life carrying guilt about Patricia, about the fire, about all of it. This feels like finally setting that burden down. You're setting it down for him. Somebody had to. The teaching farm became my favorite place. Not because it was more successful than the main farm. It wasn't. Not because it made more money. It didn't. But because it represented something purer, a fresh start built on acknowledgement of pain rather than denial of it. One Saturday, a family came for a workshop. Mother, father, 2 kids. They seemed normal until the mother pulled me aside during a break. I need to tell you something, she said. Her hands were shaking. My family lost our restaurant in a fire 3 years ago. Arson. They never caught who did it. We lost everything. My stomach clenched. I'm so sorry. The foundation helped us, gave us a loan to start over. We have a food truck now. It's not the same, but it's ours. And when I saw you were offering these workshops, I had to come, had to thank you in person. She had no idea about the history, about what Dad had done, about why the foundation existed in the first place. You don't need to thank me, I said. Yes, I do. You gave us hope when we had none. You showed us we could rebuild. She looked at her kids, laughing while they pulled radishes from the soil. You gave them a future. After she walked away, I stood there trying not to cry. This was it. This was what Grandpa's guilt and Patricia's pain and my stubborn refusal to let the past win had built. Not just farms or foundations or teaching programs, but futures. For people who'd lost everything, for families starting over, for kids who'd never have to carry the weight their parents had carried. That night, I visited Grandpa's grave for the first time in years, brought flowers, sat on the ground beside his headstone. I met Patricia, I said to the stone, to the earth, to whatever remained of him, through her daughter, through her letters, through the land she left me. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees. I know you loved her. I know you destroyed any chance you had together. I know you spent the rest of your life trying to make amends for that. A car passed on the road beyond the cemetery fence. I think you'd like what we built. The main farm, the foundation, the teaching farm, all of it. It's messy and complicated and will never fully erase what happened, but it's something. It's better. It's us showing up. I traced his name on the headstone, James Michael Hope. Mom told me once that you used to say hope wasn't a feeling, it was a decision. A choice you made every morning to believe things could be better. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I choose hope, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because you taught me that's what matters, not being perfect. Just showing up and trying to be better than yesterday. I stood, brushed dirt from my jeans, and headed back to the truck. Behind me, the wind picked up, and I could have sworn I heard his voice in it. That's my girl. The years continued to pass. The farms grew. The foundation expanded. The teaching program trained hundreds of people in sustainable agriculture. Chloe got married. A small wedding in the apple orchard. She asked me to stand beside her. I said yes. Dad walked her down the aisle. He was crying. She was radiant. And for one afternoon, we pretended we were a normal family with normal problems and normal joy. It was nice. Fleeting, but nice. Mom started dating a man from her book club. He was kind, patient, and knew about our family's complicated history. He treated her like she was precious, like she deserved good things after so many bad years. At their wedding, she pulled me aside. Is this okay? Me being happy? Why wouldn't it be? Because I stayed with your father for so long. I let you down. You did what you thought was right at the time. That's all any of us can do. Still, I should have protected you better. You protected me by showing me what strength looks like, by surviving, by starting over at 50. That's its own kind of courage. She hugged me tight. When did you get so wise? When I stopped being angry long enough to think clearly. Diana got married too, to a man she met through the Teaching Farm program. He was a chef interested in farm-to-table cooking. They were perfect together. Her growing food, him transforming it into art. At their wedding, surrounded by people who'd once been strangers and were now family, I realized something profound. The land Grandpa left me hadn't just been property. It had been a test, a challenge, a question. What would I do with inheritance built on someone else's suffering? I could have sold it, could have walked away, could have let the guilt consume me. Instead, I'd chosen to transform it, to take poison and make medicine, to build something that honored both the pain and the possibility. Standing there, watching Diana dance with her new husband, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. The land stays with people who work it, people who show up, people who try to be better. And I was all of those things. Finally, 10 years after Grandpa died, I was named Farmer of the Year by the State Agriculture Department. They praised the foundation, the teaching farm, the sustainable practices, the community impact. At the award ceremony, they asked me to give a speech. I stood at the podium, looking at hundreds of faces, farmers, activists, politicians, people who'd built their lives on the land. 13 years ago, I began. I inherited a farm built on guilt and shame and one man's attempt at redemption. I could have rejected it, could have sold it, and started fresh somewhere else, but I didn't. Because I realized something important, I paused, gathering my thoughts. We don't choose what we inherit. We don't choose our family's mistakes or their triumphs. We don't choose the burdens handed to us or the blessings disguised as curses. But we do choose what we do with those inheritances, how we carry them, whether we let them define us or refine us. People were nodding. Some were taking notes. The land I inherited came with stories, painful stories. Stories of arson and betrayal and love that destroyed more than it created. For a long time, I resented those stories, wanted to erase them, pretend they didn't exist. I looked directly at Chloe, sitting in the front row next to Dad. She smiled encouragingly. But I learned that we can't erase history. We can only choose how we respond to it. We can let it make us bitter, or we can let it make us better. We can repeat the mistakes of the previous generation, or we can break those cycles and create something new. The room was silent now, listening. My grandfather once told me that blood doesn't mean anything if you don't show up. I've expanded that philosophy. Inheritance doesn't mean anything if you don't do something meaningful with it. Land is just dirt and water and sunlight, until someone transforms it into food, into beauty, into community, into hope. I could see Mom in the audience, dabbing at her eyes. So this award isn't really for me. It's for everyone who showed up, who worked alongside me, who believed that broken things could be fixed and that pain could become purpose. It's for the families the foundation helped, for the students the teaching farm trained, for the community that embraced a vision of agriculture as healing rather than exploitation. I held up the plaque they'd given me. And it's for two people who aren't here. Patricia Brennan, who lost everything and still chose forgiveness, and James Hope, my grandfather, who made terrible mistakes and spent the rest of his life trying to make them right. They taught me that redemption isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, day after day, and trying to add to the world's goodness rather than its suffering. The applause was thunderous. People stood, but I was looking at Dad, whose face was wet with tears, and Chloe, who was grinning with pride, and Mom, whose expression said everything words couldn't. After the ceremony, dozens of people wanted to talk, wanted advice, wanted to know how they could replicate what we'd built. I told them all the same thing. Start with acknowledging the truth, all of it, the good and the bad. Then make a choice about who you want to be going forward, and show up every day to make that choice real. That night, back at the farm, I walked through the orchards one more time. The trees Grandpa planted were mature now, producing abundantly, their roots deep in the soil that held so many secrets. I touched the bark of the oldest tree and whispered, "We did it. We took what you left and made it mean something." The wind rustled the leaves, and in that sound I heard all the voices that had shaped me. Grandpa teaching me to drive, Patricia choosing forgiveness, Mom surviving, Diana believing, Chloe growing, Dad trying, all of us showing up, imperfectly, honestly, hopefully. The land stays with people who work it. And I was still working, every single day, building something that would outlast, something that would carry forward the lessons of pain and possibility, something that proved inheritance could be transformed, something that proved we could be better than our worst moments, and braver than our biggest fears, something that honored both the people we'd lost and the people we'd become. I walked back to the farmhouse as stars appeared in the darkening sky, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring, ready to keep showing up, always.